You ever feel like the world made up its mind about you before you even had the chance to speak? Like no matter what you say, or how you say it, the verdict was already handed down, and you weren't even in the room to defend yourself. Now imagine that happening not in your friend's circle or in your workplace, but in front of millions of people. Imagine your face on news channels. Your name trending for all the wrong reasons. Your story ripped apart by strangers on the internet who know nothing about you, yet feel completely confident judging every detail of your life. That's exactly what Johnny Depp says happened to him. He called himself the crash test dummy for the Me Too movement. And at first, that phrase sounds jarring, maybe even controversial. But take a second to really sit with it. What he's describing isn't about the movement itself being wrong. It's about how it unfolded. It's about how fast public opinion moved. Without waiting for facts, without asking questions, and without giving him a chance to even speak. Now, this isn't about defending or attacking anyone. It's about understanding how we, as a culture, deal with stories like these. Because Johnny's story, it isn't just his. It's a mirror. A reflection of how quickly we form opinions, and how rarely we question them afterward. Let's go back to the beginning. Johnny Depp. A man who spent decades building a career that felt almost bulletproof. From quirky roles to blockbuster hits, he carved a lane that was entirely his own. He was one of the few actors who could be wildly eccentric and still be a global superstar. And yet, all it took was one moment, one accusation, for everything to come crashing down. It started with allegations. Serious ones. Emotional ones. The kind that shake the ground under someone's reputation. Almost immediately, the consequences began. He was dropped from projects. Brand deals disappeared. People unfollowed, unfriended, and distanced themselves. Not after a trial. Not after an investigation. But right away. Just like that. Now pause. Think about that. We live in a world where information moves faster than truth. Where headlines spread in seconds. Where people don't read full stories, they read the tweet. They see the meme. They watch the clip that's already been edited for maximum reaction. So when Johnny says he was a crash test dummy, he's not saying he's the only one who's gone through this. He's saying he was the first big test case. The first high-profile male celebrity to be caught in the wave of a powerful, necessary movement, but in a way that felt less like justice and more like judgment. And here's the twist, he's not blaming the movement. He's not saying Me Too is bad. In fact, you'll never hear him say that. What he is saying is that somewhere in all this noise, we forgot something critical: due process. Fairness. Context. He didn't get a moment to explain. No room to breathe. Just instant cancellation. Now you might be thinking, yeah, but if there were serious allegations, isn't that the price someone pays? It's a fair question. But here's another one: what if the allegations aren't true? Or what if they're exaggerated? Or complicated? What happens when someone is accused unfairly, and there's no way to come back from it, even after proving their innocence? That's where Johnny's situation stands out. Instead of retreating into silence or clapping back online, he did something rare. He went to court. Not once, but multiple times. He put everything, his personal life, his private pain, his darkest moments, on display. Not because he wanted sympathy, but because it was the only path left to tell his side. And what came out? A very different version of the story than most people expected. Details that painted a more complex, more human picture. Evidence that didn't just shake public opinion, it reversed it. Suddenly, people who had turned their backs started listening again. Not because he asked them to, but because the truth, real truth, started surfacing. And that's what makes this moment so significant. Because it wasn't just about whether Johnny Depp was guilty or innocent. It was about how we, as a society, respond when someone is accused? Do we let the process play out? Or do we rush to punish, even before the facts are known? Johnny's experience shows just how brutal that rush can be. It also shows how hard it is to come back from it, even when you've done everything right. And the emotional toll. You can't measure it. Imagine being labeled a monster by millions of strangers. Imagine watching your career fall apart, your family dragged through the mud, your reputation shattered, all while staying silent, waiting for your day in court. That kind of pain doesn't just leave scars. It changes you. Now here's something else people often overlook. Depp wasn't just fighting for his image. He was fighting to reclaim his humanity. To say, hey, I'm not perfect. But I deserve to be heard. And isn't that something we all want? Think about that for a second. We all make mistakes. We all have flaws, regrets, moments in our past that we're not proud of. And yet, when someone shines a spotlight on those moments, especially in a way that strips away context or compassion, it's like the rest of who we are disappears. Suddenly, the complexity of our humanity gets reduced to a single headline. A single quote. A single accusation. For Johnny Depp, that spotlight wasn't just bright, it was blinding. It didn't just expose him. It consumed him. People forgot the years of hard work. The characters that made them laugh, cry, or feel something deeply. The artistry. The vulnerability. The times he stood up for others, gave back, or quietly supported causes that mattered to him. All of that. Gone. Overshadowed by a wave of noise that painted him as one thing, and one thing only. But here's where it gets even more personal. Johnny Depp's fight wasn't about proving he was some perfect man. He's never claimed that. In fact, he's openly talked about his battles, with addiction, with emotional pain, with the chaos that sometimes followed him. He's owned up to being flawed, to making mistakes, to being human. But what he couldn't accept, what he shouldn't have to accept, was being defined solely by someone else's version of his story. And that's where the line gets drawn. Because at the end of the day, what do most people want when they're misunderstood? They want the chance to explain. To be seen in full. To be looked at as a whole person, not just the worst headline or harshest rumor. They want grace. They want empathy. They want to be heard. That's what Johnny fought for. He wasn't chasing fame. He already had that. He wasn't trying to win in the court of social media. That battle was never going to be fair. What he wanted, what he needed, was the dignity of being seen as a person again. Not a monster. Not a symbol. Just a man with a story to tell. It's easy to say, well, he's rich. He's famous. He'll be fine. But that's a shallow take. Because money and fame don't protect you from pain. They don't shield you from shame or heartbreak or fear. In fact, sometimes they amplify it. Imagine going through the worst season of your life, and having the entire world watch, mock, and speculate about every second of it. Imagine every tear, every moment of anger, every private conversation, becoming public property. And then imagine trying to keep your soul intact through all of that. That's what makes this so human. Because if it can happen to someone like Johnny Depp, someone with resources, with lawyers, with a platform, what chance does the average person have? What happens to the teacher who's falsely accused? The parent going through a nasty custody battle? The teenager who's caught in the web of social media rumors? This isn't just about celebrities. This is about culture. About how quick we are to judge. About how slow we are to forgive. About how rare it's become to truly listen. Johnny's fight was about reclaiming that right, not just for himself, but for anyone who's ever been labeled unfairly. Anyone who's ever been shouted over, silenced, or erased by a narrative that didn't tell the whole story. And the irony? By standing up to reclaim his humanity, he reminded us of ours. He reminded us that people are more than their worst moment. That truth is rarely black and white. That pain is complicated, and healing doesn't always look clean or perfect. That the person being accused, being cancelled, being dismissed, might still be someone worth listening to. That's powerful. Because we live in a world that rewards outrage. That loves the thrill of the takedown. That feeds off of drama. And in that noise, it's easy to forget that behind every story, every headline, every scandal, is a human being. Someone with a past. With fears. With hopes. With people who love them. Johnny Depp wanted people to see that again. To see him not as a caricature, but as a person. And yeah, maybe he was the first to go through this particular fire, but he won't be the last. And because he stood there, exposed, criticized, and vulnerable, maybe we'll all be a little more careful next time. A little more thoughtful. A little more willing to wait for facts before passing judgment. Because once we take away someone's humanity, what are we left with? We're left with fear. With silence. With a culture where no one speaks their truth, because they're too afraid of being misunderstood, misquoted, or misjudged. And if there's one thing we should all fight for, it's the ability to speak and be heard, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's complicated, even when it doesn't fit the narrative. That's what Johnny Depp did. And whether you agree with him or not, whether you believe every detail or still have doubts, one thing is clear, he reminded us what it means to be human. Flawed, yes. But still worthy of compassion, dignity, and a voice. And if we can remember that, not just for him, but for everyone, then maybe there's hope for us yet. At the heart of this story is a question that cuts deeper than celebrity gossip: who gets to tell the truth? And when do we decide someone is beyond redemption? These aren't easy questions. They're uncomfortable, emotional, and often messy. But they matter, because they go far beyond Johnny Depp. They hit at the way we treat people when their lives get complicated. When their stories aren't perfect. When the narrative isn't neat and clean. Truth, in today's world, feels like it belongs to whoever speaks loudest, or whoever speaks first. And once that version of the truth catches fire online, it's nearly impossible to take back. Even if new evidence comes out. Even if context changes. Even if someone was misunderstood. The damage is already done. So who gets to be believed? Who gets a second chance? Is it only those who fit our idea of the perfect victim? Or the perfect human? Do we allow room for people to grow, to explain, to recover from their lowest moments? Because if we only allow truth to come from people we already agree with, are we really listening? And when we say someone is beyond redemption, what we're really saying is, you don't get to change. You don't get to come back. Your voice no longer matters. That's a harsh way to live. And it makes everyone afraid to be real. To admit mistakes. To ask for grace. But grace is where healing begins. Redemption isn't about forgetting the past, it's about learning from it. Moving forward. Earning trust again. If we stop believing that's possible, for anyone, then what are we even fighting for? Truth matters. But so does mercy. And a just society makes space for both. Ask ChatGPT. When we talk about justice, it has to be justice for everyone. That includes victims of abuse. That includes the wrongly accused. That includes people who've made mistakes but are trying to make it right. And somewhere in that messy middle is where Johnny's story lives. It's not black and white. It's not hero versus villain. It's complicated. Emotional. Real. And that's why it matters. Because if we're not careful, we'll create a world where people are too afraid to speak up, not just survivors, but the accused too. And that silence. That fear. It doesn't serve justice. It serves chaos. So what can we learn from all this? Maybe it's that we need to slow down. To ask questions. To wait for facts before forming conclusions. Maybe it's that we need to stop treating social media like a courtroom, and people's lives like entertainment. Or maybe it's just a reminder that behind every scandal, every headline, every trending topic, there's a person. A flawed, complex, living human being. And whether you love Johnny Depp or not, whether you believe every detail of his story or still have doubts, one thing is clear. He stood up. He spoke out. He took the hits. And in doing so, he forced us all to look in the mirror. To ask ourselves if we're being fair. If we're being honest. If we're truly listening. And maybe that's what being a crash test dummy really means, not just taking the impact, but showing us what needs to change so no one else has to go through it the same way. So now, it's your turn. What do you believe? Do you think Johnny Depp was treated fairly? Or was he the first one to get caught in a system we're still learning how to fix? Has this entire situation changed how you look at public accusations? At cancel culture? At justice itself? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's start a conversation that goes deeper than sound bites and clickbait. Let's talk human to human. And if this video gave you something to think about, even if it challenged your views, give it a like. Share it with someone who might need to hear this. And if you want more honest, thoughtful takes on the stories that shape our world, hit that subscribe button. We're not here to pick sides. We're here to ask better questions. Catch you in the next one.